Hey everyone, I'm David Muhammad, and welcome to another segment of the Digital Strategist. I have a very exciting guest tonight. His name is Nicholas. I'm going to call him Nick. Nicholas Daniel Richards, and he's come up with a great new app called Stopwatcher, and it's going to compete with a lot of location services-based transit apps that are in the market. And I think there are some new wiggles to it that will help differentiate it for its users. But now, before we get into all the granular functionalities of this great app, I want to talk to the man himself. Nicholas Daniel Richards, hyphenated.
Short version. It's a short
do you go by Nick or?
No, I demand that.
You demand Nicholas.
You will call me Nicholas down.
Nicholas Nickleby. So
I've been called all sorts of things.
So first of all, let us know where you're from in Britain, how you got to the States, educational background, and sort of the whole career and all that stuff. I'll jump in where I think I need to.
So it starts boring and then we get into the exciting. That's okay. So
where are you from? Where'd you go to school?
Stratford. Two people over here near London, in England.
So Stratford is near London, I guess. I don't know.
Relatively speaking, by American standards, by England standards, it's very far away. It's like a couple hundred miles. But over here, what's a couple hundred miles? So. But yeah, so grew up and was ginger. I've been ginger all my life. Grew up as ginger. That's exciting stuff. But went to school. Was into computers pretty young.
Early on, okay. So what were some of the first devices that you got involved with?
So the Atari 2600.
Ah, man after my own heart. Okay, and, now we're getting somewhere.
And River Raid, I think, was one of the best ones. And the Pitfall, where he swings it and you go across the crocodiles and all that stuff.
Tang.
And Pac-Man Tang, all those. And then later on, got into actual real computers. So that was, a gaming console, the classic gaming console, and then got into computers. So Commodore VIC-20, Commodore 64, and then as a teenager, Amiga, the Amiga. I never had a Mac until just a few years ago.
Sure, okay.
And
remember
then
the Altair? Do you remember the Altair?
I mean, I know of the Altair,
you know okay, same.
I'm not 180. I'm sorry, Bill Gates. But so yeah, I know. I wouldn't mind getting one now because I could just say I have an Altair. I wouldn't be able to use it, but I'm not that clever. So the, in England, you sort of have this option of finishing high school at 16 or continuing until 18. I finished at 16, and at that point, was pretty clueless as to what I was going to be doing, and very fortunately, through my mother pushing me out the door in the morning and telling me to go out and find a job, I came across this opportunity where I could do an engineering apprenticeship. So that's basically...
Electrical engineering?
No, it was mechanical engineering.
Okay.
So
sprockets, gadgets?
Yeah, it's machinings, so lathes, milling machines, lots of metric to imperial conversion, threading, logarithms, and all that fun, which I never actually learned at school. So I got into that, and I think what was great about that was, one, that got me an actual college education. Like, there was no way I was going to get a college education. I didn't come from the kind of background where it was like, sure, go up to college and we'll pay for it. It's just not that. So I didn't realize it at the time, but it was absolutely fantastic. So doing that 4 years and got a...
So you apprenticed as a mechanical engineer for 4 years?
As a mechanical engineer,
wow.
4 years, and got a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. And I think what was great about that was, so as a passion as a kid into computers, and then getting into engineering, all of a sudden I'm in this world where it's a very different world than what I operate in now, and that is the older you are and the more experience you have, the more senior you are, because you have that experience and wisdom.
Right.
You know jigs, and you know fixtures, and you know how the machine, you know all the stuff which is a very different world than sort of the digital world.
Yeah, it's an advantage in mechanical world.
Yeah,
sometimes
exactly.
It can be a disadvantage in the digital
So
world.
you would have, for example, one of the projects I worked on was for the British Ministry of Defence. And certain types of engineering projects have requirements around how close to specification you get.
Okay.
So for something that's for aerospace or
Got to be pretty close to spec.
I'll round this up.
Okay.
But it's you can have something that's a few thousandths of an inch, and it's like, it's fine. But then you get into something that's really, really, really accurate, and then you're talking, a thou of. And once you start getting into that kind of engineering, things have to be manufactured and built and tested in specific temperature environments. It gets, because temperature can affect size as well. So, long story short, what I got into while doing that was, after a couple of years of being on lathes and milling machines and sort of having very dirty hands and sort of just working for a living, very strange concept.
These days, sure. Equal labor for equal pay.
It's like, God, I have to work.
Right.
So after that, after a couple of years of that, started to get into CNC machines. And CNC machines are computer numerical control. So it's basically, you have a computer interface and you have servos, and what a human would be doing is now controlled by a machine. Sure. And what you have to do is you have to program the code for where's it going and what tools is it using and all that stuff. So at that point, I started to become obsessed. And the CNC machine, the company I was at, they had one CNC machiner. And I would just watch him every day. And the day that he was ill, they were in a panic. They couldn't get this project done. They're like, programmer's out. And I'm like, I'll have a go. And I didn't blow the machine up. It was great.
That's pretty good.
Out. So that's a start.
Right.
So fast forward to the end of the degree. And the one thing that was pretty clear, it wasn't a super plan, but it was pretty clear even to someone as naive as a 21-year-old-ish, 20-year-old-ish limey, was the fact that from a career perspective, mechanical engineering seemed to have some limitations.
Sure.
The other thing that was interesting as well was, I was very, very passionate about getting into computers, and I would love to have the situation where I'm actually paid to sit at a computer and do stuff on it, as opposed to working on a factory floor.
So the CNC experience really served.
You're still on a factory floor.
Served as the bridge to get you kind of into this computer digital space.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was the real opportunity to sort of go from I used to fart around with it as a kid, and then sort of on the side, and I'm actually doing this now properly, and I come to the end, and it's now I really want to do computers. It was sort of that push to get into something.
Sure. Would you go with me here that maybe a lot of the mechanical engineering training also kind of gave you a real strategic mind as well? Is that a whole part of mechanical engineering? Do you have to? Is there a lot of strategy involved?
I think there would be,
because in the digital space, it's all strategy, obviously.
Yeah. So so there are multiple phases to getting to understanding strategy and how we break out strategy. I think what was interesting about that experience was, number one, having respect for the process, I think another big area of it as well is, and this is something we can touch on later, especially in the world that we operate in, is when you're dealing with lots of people and you're dealing with teams, it doesn't matter how much you've done or what you've done already. There's always going to be something new that comes along, especially in the world that we're in.
That's what's great.
So you can't. I have the position or the philosophy that it doesn't matter how far you get. Fortunately, you're always learning, and never forget that. So if you have something come along, don't make a bunch of assumptions. You can use your knowledge and your experience as a guide, and you're probably, if you have the experience, you're asking the questions that some of the junior or less experienced people are not asking. But I think there was a lot learned from that. Working it was a very different environment. Working in a factory, working with guys, being the apprentice.
Blue collar sort of deal.
It's blue collar. Right. I was the T-boy. You're the youngest there. You're the T-boy. You're the one that sort of...
what does the T-boy mean?
Well, it's England.
Like
you make the T.
Oh, okay. You make the T. It's 3 o'clock.
I'm a shaped T-boy. Right? So I got my degree in engineering. And what do you do when you get a degree in something? You just don't use it. So I found an opportunity to work as tech support for, essentially they were Toshiba, but they were a reseller of Toshiba
Sure.
laptops.
Like a value-added reseller.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
And so this was a huge shift from working on a factory floor with lots of older guys to working in an environment where VAR's highly driven by sales. I mean, that's what they are. And but actually working on computers, diagnosing problems, disassembling computers and putting them back together, and they're all laptops, so it was all new stuff.
What are you
very
talking?
Exciting.
Early '90s.
This is
mid-'90s.
Yeah, this is like '94.
Yeah, sounds yeah. When Toshiba was a really hot brand.
They were, yeah.
They were the brand.
Yeah.
They were about this big.
That's right. I'm gonna open this.
Right. They're like gray. Everybody were all
It
like
comes with
gray.
its own coal power generator. So it's very portable. It has wheels. So the
You can hitch it onto the back of your truck.
that's right. So the experience there was, I think this at the start. So believe it or not, when I started out in engineering, very introverted, and then as I got into the world of you got to speak to people on telephones. Sure, I made a lot of mistakes in speaking with people on telephones. I was the guy you would speak to when you had a problem.
So a pure tech background.
So
from Toshiba, what did you do?
Well, essentially, the great thing with Toshiba was as a computer, passionate computer consumer, I could, at nights and weekends, I could go to the warehouse and request any hardware that I wanted, and I could test it with configuration. Now, this was
nothing better than that. Yeah.
This was Windows 95 days. Yeah. So you still had to deal with memory exclusion and PCMCIA cards and stuff like that. So, oh my gosh, you're gonna plug in a modem and a CD-ROM to the laptop? Are you crazy?
CD-ROM.
So CD-ROM. I have my business cards. So that was just a great experience. And one of the great things that I attribute to being in that environment was because I was playing around a lot. That's when I discovered I can actually hook up my computer to like BBS boards and the internet, which were in the form that I saw it was CompuServe. So CompuServe was the first experience I got, and 95, yeah. And little did I know that first browser that I was using was Mosaic. That came with CompuServe, and it took me a few weeks to really understand and put into context all the, not that I came out with some super intelligence, but all the things that were going on with what a web browser was, etc.
I hate to jump in. You've obviously been in the game for a while. And
I'm 100 years old.
You babysitted dirt, right?
That's right.
You babysat dirt. I get that. We're going to take a break here. And we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about your background.
Yep.
And we're going to get into Stopwatcher.
That's awesome.
Take a really deep dive. So stick with us. You're watching The Digital Strategist. I've got the creator of Stopwatcher with me, Nicholas Daniel Richards. And we're going to be back in about 60 seconds. Thanks.
After 17 years working as a mason, Mike was laid off. I met him when he came into the library looking for help. He found a job opening, but the application was only online. Mike said he'd spent his entire life around tools, but had never used a computer. I showed him how, and he ended up applying for numerous jobs online. I saw Mike the other day. His new computer skills paid off. He's working again.
New Jersey libraries are transforming lives. Tell us your story.
Hey, welcome back to The Digital Strategist. I'm David Muhammad, and I've got my great guest here, Nicholas Daniel Richards.
God, it's great every time. The question is anybody
That's
still awake?
what she said.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I told you I'd work that in.
That's awful.
So we're going to find out a little bit more about your background, and then we're going to get into this app. So you're from Stratford, not far from London. You started out educationally as a mechanical engineer, which you got your degree in.
Yep.
You were
got into computers.
fixing laptops for Toshiba.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
While
Give me
fixing
like 3 stops in 2 minutes.
While fixing laptops, got to know this chap who was a customer, told him about the internet. He was loaded.
It's always good.
He was very excited about, I was talking at the time about 60 million people next year going to be on the interweb.
Wow.
So it was like, we're going to start a company. And all of a sudden, at the age of 22, I'm co-founder of a web company in the UK. So I spent the next 2 years losing weight by not eating or getting paid, but learning a huge amount of programming.
That's what it's all about.
And through that, I developed a set of skills, which became very attractive for companies over here. It was starting to ramp up to the 2000s. The .com was really heating up over here. So in Christmas of '97, came over, and
So you became a web programmer.
I became a web programmer, was building websites. And after a couple of years, actually, to where that company went, of trying to tell people about websites in the UK and just not getting anywhere. But fortunately, having the ability to just, I had no family responsibilities or anything like that, so I could starve and learn this stuff. So it was fantastic from that perspective. But as a business, a huge failure, but lots of lessons learned.
Yeah, a lot of those dot bombs we learned around that. You can't make a living on projected earnings. You really got to have some money.
Well, that's interesting. So when I came over, the .com that I ended up working for they were called Mining Co., and then they became About.com. And I interviewed there when they were Mining Co., and my first day
You
of
were
work.
one of the programmers for About.com?
Yeah.
One of the first?
It was a low number. That's back when you used to use numbers, and it was a low number. Yeah.
Impressive.
But there were lots of. It was an incredible.
So you built out that infrastructure, or
well, they had already
or was it
got
more
a
of a
lot of
user
momentum
experience
by
side,
it, and what I was focused on were the publishing tools for the guides to publish out to all of the
so
users.
content management systems, I guess.
Content management systems. One exciting thing. Which is laughable now, but one exciting thing back then was actually creating dynamic flash, and this was in 2000. So that was back then.
That was a big deal.
That was a big deal. I still did it on my Commodore 64 now. So at About.com, met someone who was in design, and we did work on the side. And then we decided to form a company on the side. And this is how crazy it was back then. So this was in 2000. We formed the company. And I think within 2 or 3 weeks of forming the company,
you got VC.
We were being acquired.
Even already acquired.
So,
but you were hot because you were out of About. So
we were out of. I don't know if it was that. I think it was just because we were doing. It was at a point where companies were scrambling to try and get into the space. So they were like, buying everything. It was crazy times.
I remember those times.
So
good
times. A lot of lessons there. So, fast forward after that acquisition, I'm in the agency world. I'm, and long story short.
So you go entrepreneur, UK entrepreneur, US early startup programmer.
Yep.
And then now you're bought out from a side deal that you and a partner put together.
Yep. And now we're in the agency.
Now you're at Madison Avenue.
And now we're part of Omnicom. Yeah. So
the biggest sort of Marcom.
Omnicom.
Well, just a small company.
Just a little.
Yeah, we've heard of it.
Little multi-billion-dollar organization.
154.
They will crush you. So the the journey then was being a software engineer and being very passionate about building stuff, and then growing a company. And you've got to do things like manage other people, inspire, lead, set strategy, and that's where we start getting into really understanding product, working with clients, and starting to understand the whole facet of stakeholder needs and sort of the agency side of how the sort of dirty secrets of how agencies engage.
They call it cross-functional teams.
And sort of the multidiscipline. But when you're an agency, you generally want to go in. A lot of agencies do this. They'll go into a client. Absolutely, we can do all that stuff, and then it's an internal.
Of course,
how are we going to go? So a lot of that, and.
So you did your time in the agency world.
I did 5 years at Omnicom. Then with the same chap, we started our own agency again.
Digital or integrated?
Digital.
Okay.
Great company. I architected BBC Worldwide infrastructure for their publishing. BBC America,
Their site?
Cablevision, everything.
Nice.
Even the telephones. I'm kidding.
So you guys got great work.
We got great work, and after 5.5 years of that, of clocking in extremely large amounts of hours,
Sure.
100
It's what it
odd
takes.
hours
I mean,
a
it
week.
is kind of what it takes when you're doing that deal.
I decided at that point that I had been essentially in the vacuum of companies that I had been in the leadership of for nearly 10 years. So I wanted to know, I sort of came to that point where I wanted to know how the stuff that I'm doing, how does this compare to what I perceive as like some of the other big boys out there, the huge, RGA, companies like that, how are they doing it? So I took some time off, very lucky to be able to do that, had a daughter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've not slept since. And
Welcome to the Daddy Club. That's how it works.
Oh, that's fantastic. Lots of scotch. So then I came across Code and Theory. And Code and Theory was a great agency from Vogue, Ebony, we recently did that launch. Worked with Pete Cashmore for the Mashable iPad.
Oh, really?
So, working at Code and Theory.
That's one of my heroes. I love Cashmore.
Yeah, he's a great guy and a fellow Limey. So that was my agency world. I mean, been in the agency world for 13 years.
Yeah, you did it. It's a great story. And so out of that, how did you come to the cliff of wanting to develop your own mobile app? And then why a location services-based app that competes in an already sort of saturated space?
And we'll see if I can make up some stuff around that. So this is the challenge. When you are scaling up, as an engineer, I think, when you're scaling up in terms of role and responsibility, you get further and further away from the actual core of what it is you were doing. So for me, what I'm trying to say is I was not writing code. I was not writing production code, and I tried to write production code for a long time as a technology leader, and then one of the problems that happens is you have to do leadership stuff, and you have this code out there which is yours, and yes, I had code that needed to be fixed every now and then, and it just created lots of challenges. So I sort of even got removed from writing production code. My coding was looking at new platforms and prototyping. So being a CTO, I think, was fantastic. I got to work with some really great people.
Were you CTO in the agency?
Yeah, I'm CTO for past 8 years.
So in Omnicom, you were CTO?
Chief technologist there.
At Omnicom?
Well, Omnicom is many different.
That's crazy. You're like global CTO.
Yeah, my brain would be.
You're like Einstein here.
And I would have no hair.
We're not worthy.
That's right. I'm not that clever. So
still awesome.
Yeah, I mean, as a CTO.
So you were getting further, as you went up your trajectory of climbing the corporate ladder, you were getting further and further away from what your passion was, which is really writing code.
I mean, that's exactly.
And really, what you got, your
it's product building. It's not just writing the code, but it's and that's also another challenge with the agency world as well. You come up against a lot of constraints. Most of them are time and budget. Things that have to be done yesterday, and we don't have enough money to do it. So
get it done.
We get it done, right. And it's a challenge when you really passionately want to create things that have a really great impact on people's lives. And doing BBC and
so you're talking about really making really compelling, relevant technology as opposed to just sort of moving
getting
the needle.
campaign stuff out.
Right.
Like
more impressions for this campaign.
Exactly.
What is that campaign?
So, I live that world, and I still live that world through my consulting because I still have to pay my bills. But getting out of that world and saying, okay, let's try and build some stuff and help other companies out and learn some more things was the big jump. That's ultimately why I did it.
So Stopwatcher came out of that creative sort of paradoxical dynamic that you were sort of living through.
Yeah, there have been a couple of things. There's the Quite Peckish thing, which is like this Facebook community of several thousand people, and they're all British people living in America and Britophiles and all that stuff. And then Stopwatcher, it's sort of the urge to want to create stuff. and there's a reason for it. It's, the stopwatcher reason was a combination of a couple of things. Number one, I'm 2 blocks away from the train station. I can see it. Do I need to run right now, or should I just walk? I don't know. If I go into HopStop, and this is where HopStop, Embark, those applications come in. If I go into HopStop, I got to plug in information. I can't do that while should I run or should I walk?
A little cumbersome.
So
from a functionality perspective,
they're plan tripping. That's they're trip planning. Sorry, not plan tripping. Or I could say plan tripping.
Either way, it works. It does work.
I trip while I plan.
While I plan.
So I just wanted something that would give me that information right there. 2 minutes, 1 minute, 3 minutes, visually right there. It doesn't require an internet connection. There's no latency. It's just loaded. So that was the product need, the actual user need. Then for me, the technical need was, I've built stuff and led teams on building stuff for Mashable, for Vogue, but we've always done those native, and I never coded them myself.
Specifically for mobile, never sort of HTML5?
Well, yeah, exactly. Sure. Native apps, so Objective-C and Java for Android. So I wanted to take a platform where I could create once and publish and test it, because we always sort of wanted to do this in the agency world. So Titanium was the framework I decided on because it's JavaScript based, and that's where I'm stronger. And I created the first version of the app in 4 days.
Wow.
And it actually took more time for Apple to approve the app.
Right. How long did it take you for it to get vetted?
They were actually pretty quick.
A couple weeks?
No, it was like 5 days.
Oh, that's very fast.
It's really fast. I know.
That's like
having been through.
That's like Roadrunner fast.
Yeah. I mean, Mashable, I think was.
I did an app
a week.
for Little Organic, and it took like 3 weeks, but that's pretty fast too. But 5 days is unheard of.
Well, it's also because there's not that much functionality in the app, so it's a really straightforward, simple app.
So they download Stopwatcher directly from iTunes.
Yep.
Is there a site as well?
There's a site, stopwatcher.com, and it's Stopwatcher without the E.
Right. Just the R.
And it is also available for Android. So I've basically been building it and publishing it out to iOS first, because we have 90% users on iOS, and
Plus you get iPad and iPod Touch as well as iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. And then for Android, it's the same version. I'm sort of releasing those after. But we're approaching 1,000 downloads at this point. We're getting some.
Like 1,000 a month. So you guys just launched not long ago, so it's like 1,000 in your first month.
I would like to think it's 1,000 a month.
Well, I mean, that's what you're in marketing, so you've got to spin it. You've got to put that positive.
It's $1 million a minute.
We'll be there.
Yes, that's right.
So awesome. So thanks for coming out tonight.
Sir, thank you.
And talking about Stopwatcher and talking about your background. So again, Nicholas Daniel Richards.
Longest name in the world.
That is a nice hyphenated sort of 8 or 9 syllable deal there. Madison Avenue veteran, a veteran of startups, and also has a very cool app out called Stopwatcher. And I think it's going to compete very well against HubSpot. You heard it here first on The Digital Strategist. I'm David Muhammad. Thanks for coming out once again. And I would be remiss if I didn't say goodnight to my wife, Jessie, daughter Madison, son David Jr., and daughter Naomi. Good night and thanks. Bye.